So I'm connected. Awesome. Great. Go ahead.
Yeah, hello. I'm Katerina. I'm event manager at Standuply. It's project management automation tool, and we have app for Slack and Microsoft Teams, and now we are on for Jira. So our app called Standuply Timesheets, and we are hosting this. Events, and we invite all of you for this session. And I'd like to introduce our speaker, Richard Cheng. He's founder of Agility Prime Solutions, and Richard is also a certified Scrum trainer and Agile coach, and his uh, experience with real world can sorry, I forgot. Can demonstrate how to work in agile. In agile. So, so please meet our speaker.
Ah, thank you for the kind words, Katrina. Thank you for setting all this up, Katrina. Appreciate your putting this together. And welcome everyone. So today we are going to talk about we're going to Ted Lasso this retrospective. Um, and so to start, well, let's start with a bit of kind of a group discussion. So take a moment to think about one of the best retro experiences you've had. Think about one of the worst retrospective experiences you've had. Right now, I'm going to open up to the group. Since the concept here is about positive retrospectives, let's start with the positive side. Anyone want to share one of the best retro experiences they've had? Who would like to share one of the best retrospective experiences they've had? Would anyone like to chime in? There's only 10 of us so far, so now's the time to chime in because it's a small group so far. Who's been in a great retrospective? Go ahead, Sara. Sara, talk us through one of the great retrospective experiences you've had. What made it great?
Hey, Rich. Thank you. So I've actually been in a couple of your certification classes in Arlington, Virginia, Virginia Tech, and then online recently. And I have to say that with my experience, both being on a Scrum team and then kind of leading a Scrum team for the first time a few years ago, my favorite experience was when we used the retrospective as a ceremony during one of our trainings. And I think it was my first product owner training. I loved how a lot of people provided really critical feedback of the training, and you were able to literally shift and implement what other people needed or wanted to focus on or steer away from. And I just thought that was really cool to see it in live action in a training context.
Well, thank you for the once again kind words. And what what I really like about the story, other than it was about me, what I really liked about the story was that you had the retrospective, and coming out of it, you actually we did things to fix it. We did things to make it better, right? And so, which is a good point because one of the things we'll talk about here is in a lot of retrospectives, what we hear a lot is a lot of times we use it to complain and to kind of talk about how things are going wrong. But the danger I see is a lot is we walk out and nothing happens, right? We walk out and the action items are things like going forward, we'll be cognizant of this. We'll be aware of this. We'll keep an eye on this. That's not action. And so in your example, what I really liked about it was that we identified issues, but then the group was able to take resolutions to address the issues I like and make things better. That's a great example. Yeah. Sara, let me put you on the spot for a second. If you don't have one, that's fine. That's no problem at all. But do you remember one of the worst experiences you've had in a retrospective?
Yes, that would be one that I led
Oh
for
no. Yeah.
when when I was new to the Scrum Master / product owner / continuous improvement analyst. I was wearing a lot of different hats, um, and the seasoned programmers and who could code were not feeling agile at all. They wanted to continue with the waterfall ways because that's what they had done the last 20 years, and I was all about it because I was green and new, and I loved it and tried to put the best positive spins on it I could, but it didn't matter how well it was articulated or how flexible we were. It was just culture, and it was really tough.
Yeah, that can be very challenging. Lisa Atkins, in her book, Coaching Agile Teams, talks about when you work with groups like that, part of it is kind of meet them where they are, right? Because you're here and they're there, and we want them to be here, but they're not on that side yet. And so trying to help them walk down that path would be the key. But I can definitely see, Sarah, where that'd be very challenging. That's a great example too, Sarah. Sarah, thank you for sharing both those examples.
Sure, thank you.
Hasina, what do you think, Hasina? Give me some of your thoughts, please.
Hi. I'm not in a traditional Scrum environment, so we're bringing that in. I work in a lab on the research and development end. And I think there was just one time I led Scrum retrospective, and it just didn't click. And it was kind of like hearing crickets as we were going through each question. I just was very uncomfortable no matter how much I tried to kind of get everyone to engage. It just was not working. So that was, and now that's always a big fear of mine. Anytime I'm about to start one, I'm like, I hope everyone is mentally ready and able to willing to contribute.
Yeah, we've been in situations, I've seen that too, where you get in there and it's crickets, what went well, what didn't go well, and there's no way to draw them out. And that can be very challenging. Well, remind me as we go to kind of sprinkle in some techniques to help with that. And the biggest thing I would say about that, Hasina, is to identify, why do we think that is? Is it because is it a culture thing? Is it because they don't feel like they can be open and candid? Is it because they don't believe in the value of this meeting? Is it because they're busy thinking about other stuff? Once we identify why we think what's the biggest impediment for that openness, we can get to the root cause. But we'll talk about some techniques that potentially help with that as we go. That's a great example too, Hasina. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to chime in with the experience they've had for either a good, positive, or a horrible retrospective? And Sarah, I see your hand up, Sarah, but I think that might be up from before, Sarah.
Sorry, taking it down.
Yep, thank you. Anyone else want to chime in?
I can very quickly share an experience about the worst. On the best one, I agree with Sara. So I had more or less the same experience. But on the worst, it was basically like a blaming session, where instead of a retrospective, basically people were blaming each other and not focusing on the flow or the process or area of improvements, but basically like blaming each other. And that was really awful feeling to be in that situation. And then we decided to finish the retrospective earlier. And then we analyzed also the causes of why there was such a reaction, like you were saying, right? It could be people that were not feeling in a safe environment, in this case, very aggressive. And also basically they were feeling there was a waste of time. So it really depends also on the culture of the company and the maturity of people and how they're used, to the retrospective. That just in few words to share my experience.
Yeah, that's a tough one, right? Because if it gets a little personal, and you're attacking the people instead of the problems, and it's very hard to have a productive conversation when you're put in a defensive position where people feel offended. It's hard to recover and have productive conversations after that is a huge problem. That's a great example, Martino. Excellent. Yeah, great example so far. Anyone else want to share? Great examples of retrospectives that have gone well, as well as where it can go awry. And we'll talk through some of this. So the concept for this talk is our Ted Lasso retrospective. For those not familiar with the Ted Lasso show, number one, watch it. It's a great show. It's on Apple TV. I am not being paid or sponsored by Apple nor Apple TV. Although Apple and Apple TV, if you're listening, I am not against corporate sponsorship. I'll wear the t-shirt. Just we can work it out. I love your products. But with that said, it's a great show. In fact, let's watch a clip. So we're about to see a very short clip with an interview with Jason Sudeikis, who is the lead character of Ted Lasso. Let's watch this clip right now. Let me make sure the sound is on here. It is. Okay, great. Here we go. So that's Jason Sudeikis. He is a lead character in the show. He plays a American who was a American football coach in university here in the U.S. Goes to the England, plays in the English Premier League, and takes a team and coaches them. And the show really focuses on a lot of the positivity of character growth throughout the seasons. It's a great show. So once again, I highly recommend it. In fact, if you haven't seen it yet, I'm going to warn you right now. At the very end of this module, I'm going to show another clip, and that last clip I show has a bit of a spoiler in it. So just be warned that that's coming in the later clip. So what we're going to talk about here is, in so many retrospectives are focused on what we do wrong, what we can do better, but we're really going to focus on maximizing the positivity of our retrospectives. Now, as we start, let me quickly introduce myself. My name is Richard Cheng. I'm an agile trainer and coach. I have a series of certifications. I guess none of them are really relevant to this session, but a lot of my background is in government, commercial, and nonprofit association work. So I've had a chance to see a lot of this stuff happen in both the government settings, big companies, small companies, associations. And what I noticed is, while there are nuanced differences, there are a lot of similarities, and a lot of what comes down to making the biggest differences in retrospectives is team culture and organizational culture. And we'll talk a little bit about that in this session. I live here in Reston, Virginia, in the US. In fact, in the chat window, what I like is to have everyone in the chat window type in where you are coming in from. So I'm coming in from Reston, Virginia. In the chat window, let's see where everyone else is coming in from. Boston, welcome Boston. Very nice. I know we have Berlin and Barcelona. We have Washington. Thank you, Heather. Ah, Lynchburg, Sarah. That's not far. Yeah, that's right. That's why you would have been in the Blacksburg. Yeah, I went to school at Virginia Tech. New York. Awesome. Berlin. Great. I have a fun, interesting, boring fact. I like to share fun, interesting, boring facts. So my fun, interesting, or boring fact is I actually have 3 passports. I was born in Taiwan, and so I have a Taiwanese passport. But then when I was young, we immigrated to Canada, and I was a Canadian, and I had a Canadian passport. But then when I was in school, we immigrated to the US, and I became later an American and have an American passport. So I do have 3 passports at home, but 2 of them are way out of date. You have my link to my LinkedIn, as well as my email address, as well as my link tree. This QR code here takes you to my link tree. In my link tree, you have access to all of my social media, including my SlideShare account. So if you follow my link tree, go to my SlideShare, you will see a soft copy of this presentation, as well as several other presentations as well. Let me set the stage a bit here. So what I've noticed a lot in retrospectives is, in our retrospectives, we spend a lot of time talking about, how we're horrible at things. Here are the mistakes we make. Here's why we stink. Here's the issues we have. Here's the problems we have. Here's why we're bad. Here's why we can't succeed. And a lot of it is focused around kind of the problems, the issues, and why we stink, right? Which are important things to consider, but I think it's also very important to talk about getting better. I'll give you an example. So one of my clients in the past was a large insurance company, Progressive Insurance. Some of you may know them from their spokesperson, Flo. So they're a company I've done a lot of work with in the past. So I was teaching an in-person class at Progressive Insurance, and we're in their training course. And as they're learning things, they're realizing they're not doing things exactly perfectly. And I think they're in about a year and a half, 2 years in at this point, the group I was working with. And they realized there's a lot of things that they were doing flat out wrong in terms of like what is commonly known as good Scrum practices. And so a lot of the folks in the room say, "Whoa, why are we doing so bad? Why are we so horrible at this? We're awful, this and that." But then one of the agile coaches in the room stood up and said, "I know we're not perfect. There's a lot we can be doing better. But the fact is, 9 months ago, you here on the business side and you here on the IT side, I could not put you in the same room together without literally a fight breaking out. You guys were always yelling at each other. You had no trust, no communication, no collaboration. And now you're integrated on the same team. You guys are going happy hour together. You're doing lunches together, and you're working together. And it's not us and them anymore. It's we. For us as a culture, that's a massive win." And the point was, that's amazing. That is a massive win, right? And what we need to do is you need to sit back and celebrate these massive wins. And for that organization, that by having that win within 9 months, that pays for itself. So What happens here is we need to celebrate these wins and realize we may not be perfect, and we want to address what we're not perfect at and get better, but we have to appreciate the journey as well, like Progressive did. Them and the IT side and business side coming together was amazing, right? I'll give you another example. Another client, I'm here in Reston, Virginia, right outside Washington, D.C. So I do a lot of work with the government here in the U.S. One of my clients in the past was an organization called OPM, Office of Personnel Management. They're a government agency. So when I started working with them, one of the very first meetings I had was with their then CIO. And so I sat down, this was 2009 or 10, right around there. And so I sat down with the federal CIO and I kind of gave them a briefing on what Agile was, what Scrum and Agile Kanban was. And so specifically, they were looking at a lot of the Scrum implementations. So at the end of the briefing, the CIO said, I love it. We need to do this. I need you to get our requirements teams doing Scrum, our design teams doing Scrum, our architecture teams doing Scrum, our development teams doing Scrum, our testing teams doing Scrum, our release teams doing Scrum. So I had to pull the CIO aside and said, look, from a Scrum standpoint, having those as separate teams requires a lot of handoffs. It's very slow and very risky. What we want to do from a team standpoint is we want to integrate all those capabilities on the same team so we as a team can own it end to end. It reduces the friction and the risk, and we have a greater probability of success. The CIO looked at me like I was speaking gibberish, like I was speaking Martian, like I grew a third eye out of my head. He looked at me like that was complete nonsense. And he said, what are you talking about? That will never happen here. That's crazy. This was 2009. In 2016, I get a call from OPM leadership, and they said, yeah, we finally done it. I said, that's great. What'd you do? We are now 100% agile across our entire office of CIO, and all our teams are cross-functional. We can take it more or less end-to-end, a few exceptions, but way better than where they were 7 years ago. So that's amazing. Now, with that said, one of my clients in the past was the Motley Fool. Fool.com is their website, their financial advising website. I'll put the link in the chat. They're probably the best agile shop I've ever worked at. What OPM did in 7 years, the Motley Fool did in 8 months. But it's also not a fair comparison because the Motley Fool is a 300-person company that's very nimble, very quick, can pivot on a dime. So 8 months for them was a great journey. OPM is a large government agency. They have all the restrictions and the governance compliance and the heft of government. And so for them making that journey in 6, 7 years, it's actually very good because they're getting better year after year after year. And so we need to celebrate the fact that we are, going through our journey. And it's not just about how we think, but it's about recognizing our achievements. And so what we want to talk about here is we really want to shift our concepts to positivity, celebrate what we do well, using that positivity to get better and improve. We want to make sure that we use our positivity to make mistakes and issues. Move away from that great example Martino gave earlier of how you messed up, you screwed up, and how you're bad to look, let's learn from what we did and identify how do we get better, right? And then using that positivity to come up with a plan. So we'll talk about that. One quick note, as I'm going through this, one thing I forgot to mention is that to make this very accessible, Zoom actually has very good closed captioning capabilities. So if anyone wants to turn on their closed captioning so they can see the printout at the bottom as I'm speaking, feel free to do so. And the Zoom closed captioning is actually pretty good. So feel free to do that to increase the accessibility of the session. Now, with that said, we're going to jump into a breakout room exercise. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to create a couple of breakout rooms, and in your breakout rooms, I want you to have the following conversation. Scenario A, your team is doing great. You met all your sprint goals. Your product owner is pleased with the results to date. Yay, that's fantastic. Scenario B, your team did not do so well. Nothing was completed during that sprint. Your team members are complaining and blaming each other for the failures. So in your breakout rooms, I want you to talk about both scenarios and identify, if you're the Scrum Master, how would you facilitate those sessions? Let me create the breakout rooms very quickly. Give me 1 second here. 1 moment, please, as I do that. Give me 1 second. All right. Great. So what I'll do is I'll create 2 breakout rooms. The Zoom will put you in the breakout room. I will give you 7 minutes breakout rooms to have this conversation. So about 7 minutes. So kind of time box it about 3.5 minutes per session. So we'll have, actually, let's give you 8 minutes. Give you 8 minutes, feeling extra generous today. I'll give you 8 minutes in breakout rooms. So time box it to about 4 minutes per scenario. And the Zoom will put you in the breakout room automatically so you can chit chat in there. So you can just, you don't have to do anything. The Zoom will put you in there automatically, and you'll see an 8-minute countdown timer in the room. Any questions for me before I open up the breakout rooms? All right, give me 1 second here. Opening up the breakout rooms now. Have fun opening up the breakout rooms now. And I will project the screen into the breakout room. All right, welcome back, everyone. Give me 1 second here. I just have my kid texting me real quick. Just reply this real quick. All right, let's go to team one. Room one, Katerina, Martino, Mandy, and Wendy. Give me some highlights from either one of these scenarios. What did you folks talk about here?
I can go quickly. I mean, I was imagining the scenario A, which is hopefully where we want to be, but it is not so common. By the way, very quick, I was saying that I believe there is still room of improvement. So if we are doing great in terms of project process, there is, maybe we can talk about other things in the retrospective, right? For example, what are your personal ambitions, like in terms of individual development plan, or for example, what kind of features we would love to add to our product and do some experiment in production to see through an A/B testing or whatever if there is accepted well from our customer. So what I was trying to imagining in this situation is that yes, we focus on the process, on the flow, on the goals, but if you have enough time to focus also on the people, what are their expectation and ambitions, this could be a great reward for the team. That was like more or less for this scenario.
Well, I think that sounds great. Yeah, focus on some of the things they'd like to improve on, especially the kind of the professional development, personal levels, as well as other topic ideas. I think those are great, Martino. Yeah, excellent
Cool.
ideas.
Thank you.
Anyone else from Team One want to share? Great ideas, Martino.
So yeah, Wendy shared her experience with scenario B, and I really like that she said that everyone should be heard and everyone should be included. So in this hard situation, but of course there is no scenario where there is nothing were completed. Something was completed, something not. So like yeah, it was really insightful. Thank you, my group, for this.
Yeah, it's really getting those different perspectives. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Was there something else you said?
No, that was me. I just said, yep. It's
Oh.
just echoing in the background. This is Wendy.
Oh,
Go
great.
ahead.
Thank you, Wendy. Yeah, no, that sounds great. Getting those different perspectives, those different concepts in there to kind of see kind of what different people thought of what happened. I think that sounds great as well. Yeah. Yeah, great points from team one. Team two, Danielle, Michael, and Sarah. Give me one of the highlights you folks talked about in your room, team two.
I'll go real quick. So I'm actually gonna go and say the opposite of Martino. I appreciate very much what he said. In the retros, whether they are scenario A or scenario B, I like to focus and open them up with having everyone understand why we have a retro. I think a lot of people think that the goal is output, that we're going to walk away with an action item. But I actually don't think that's the goal of a retro. I think the goal of the retro is to build teams that can work well together so that we can build products efficiently that serve our customers' needs. So I like to focus my retros on that piece first. And in order to have conversation and have teams, you have to have trust and psychological safety, and you need to know what is a safe space to be able to speak up. So I like to focus the beginning of retros on that piece, regardless of the team or what's happening. So there's that understanding. And then you hope that you come out of it with a continuous improvement action item because, you want to continually improve. But
yeah, I think that's right. And that trust and safety, I think, is a critical part of it, right? In fact, if anyone's seen Adam Weisbart, it's a friend of mine. He's a trainer out on the West Coast. So Adam Weisbart has the Stuff a Bad Scrum Master Says video. If you haven't seen it, do Google search for stuff, well, except he uses the other word, but Stuff a Bad Scrum Master Says. It's a hilarious video. So there's one scene that kind of highlights this. There's a developer that's about to complain about the schedule, and the bad Scrum Master, Adam, says, surprise, everyone, our CEO is going to join us for the retrospective today, but everyone act normal. That developer is not finishing that sentence about their schedule being unrealistic, right? And so it's a great point that we have to establish that team, that trust and that safety and that openness so we can be open and candid and vulnerable in a safe way in the retrospectives. That's an excellent point. Great point. Yeah. Anyone else from team two or team one want to chime in? Great point so far. Awesome. So I can share some of my own experiences with that. So in scenario A, I actually had this. So when I was at the Motley Fool, I was there for 3 years, and the team at Motley Fools are really sharp. And you give them 3 years to do anything, they tend to do it very well. So towards the end of my time there, they were really humming along at a great pace. And it turns out there's only really so much juice you can squeeze from the fruit, right? And so towards some of our later retrospectives, we focused on, here's some things we focused on, is we focused on how can we provide more value to the organization, right? Now, how can we provide more business and user value in our products? How can we get our products to our users faster? I thought we were very good. We were working at a really good pace, a really good effectiveness, efficiencies, and we were having fun. And so how can you share what makes our team so fun and enjoyable? How can we share that with other teams so they can have that same kind of engagement? And then, based on the work we do and based on the type of products we're building, within that constraint, how can we make a world a better place based on the type of products we're putting out? So it was less about, how can we improve, as a team, but more kind of some of these concepts here were some of the focuses of the retrospectives we had as we get to that, if you're familiar with the Tuckman model, that forming, storming, norming, performing to hyper-performing. Once we're at that performing, hyper-performing model, it's less about tweaking the things we do, although there's always an opportunity for that. But these are some of the points we looked at as well. But then scenario B, I've seen as well. So I was coaching a very kind of a new Scrum Master who was kind of learning the ropes. And so the new Scrum Master reached out to me one day and was really upset because they had a sprint where everything went horrible. And like Martino's example, everyone was blaming everyone else. And they're all mad at each other. And the Scrum Master was very concerned that this retrospective was to be very counterproductive. It was just going to be arguing. The Scrum Master was very tempted to cancel retrospective because they thought the feelings were a little too raw, the emotions were too raw. And so we sat down, and what we worked out was a plan where what the Scrum Master did is the Scrum Master approached each team member individually prior to the retrospective and basically said, for us to succeed at the end of the next sprint, if things turn around, if things change and everything went great, we got along great, we were able to achieve what we wanted to achieve, what did we do to make that happen? And so the Scrum Master went to each individual team member individually before the retrospective to do that. And what they also said is, hey, to help me out, can you think about this and take some notes and bring those notes with you to retrospective so that we can kind of have some thoughts already kind of somewhat thought out a little bit. The key to this was the Scrum Master went to each team member individually. Because the Scrum Master went to each team member individually, what happened was that team member was able to vent a lot of their frustrations, their perspectives, and what they saw in the sprint, and kind of talk it out one-on-one with the Scrum Master. So they had a chance to kind of air that out in a very safe way one-on-one with the Scrum Master. But then by the Scrum Master asking team member to do this, what happens is we start shifting kind of the input coming into the retrospective away from all the negativity to thoughts on how to constructively make it better. And so that's a technique they use. And Scrum Master said, that really helped a lot because of that, the members were able to vent out their frustrations ahead of time. Scrum Master was able to talk them down through that, but also people came in with a lot of really good productive ideas. And so I'm not saying these are the only ways to address these issues, but those are the ways I've addressed these in the past. Yeah. Any questions about either one of those scenarios so far?
I have one.
Go ahead.
So in the best case scenario, which was scenario A, you mentioned that, you could start to ask, some of those questions that you had up a minute ago. But after a while, would it become boring? Would it become like, I don't mean to say boring, but,
Stale.
like, yeah, like, like, oh, we keep doing this. We're doing pretty good. Why do we need to keep doing this retrospective kind of thing? It's starting to get like, routine and right.
That's
So
certainly,
like, how do you keep it fresh?
yeah, that certainly is the danger, right? The danger is it gets stale and boring. Part of it is we have to have a series of tools. I'm going to show you some here. We have to have a series of different techniques, so it's not always the same technique. In fact, one of the things we did that was really fun is other team members wanted to flex their facilitation chops. And so towards my year 3 at Motley Fool, one of the things we did is we said, hey, does anyone want to facilitate next time? And so a lot of team members would say, oh, I'd like to try that. And so we kind of rotated facilitators. I brought in when I was at Motley Fool at the time, we had 7 different Scrum teams. And so sometimes to freshen things up, I'd bring Scrum Master from another team in to facilitate as well. But I would say this, there's only one type of team that doesn't need any more retrospectives, and that's the perfect team. But the danger there, well, the problem there is if you believe you're on the perfect team, then you definitely need a retrospective because it doesn't exist, right? And so there's always opportunity to improve and get better. But your point's very good, Wendy, is as we go through our journey, how do we keep it fresh? How do we not get just stuck in a rut where we're always in the same things? A lot of it's going to different techniques. And also asking the team saying, hey, for our next retrospective, what thoughts on how to make it more fun, more engaging, more fresh? And so maybe changing venues. One team started doing their retrospectives outside when it's nice so they can enjoy the fresh air. And so there's different ways to kind of potentially add that freshness to it so that we're continuously on that continuous improvement track. I will say one thing. I like using a sports analogy when teams get frustrated with the retrospectives in that greatness invests in themselves, right? And so what we know on the best teams are not unsatisfied about being good. They're always looking to get better. That's why they're the best teams and not the good teams, right? And so the analogy I like to make in sports is if you're a tennis fan or a golf fan, analogy is a tennis player like Serena Williams, one of the greatest tennis players, in our time. Someone like Serena Williams, she was the best tennis player of her time, but she had a full-time dedicated coach dedicated only to her, right? And so if I'm the best tennis player among my peers, why do I need a coach? I'm the best. And the reason is, as the best, I know that we have to keep investing into it. I know that no matter what I do, there's always improvement for somewhere else, in something else. And to keep investing, that keeps us up there. And so I think it's still important to do it, but the nature of that may change over time is the thing. Does that help, Wendy?
Yep.
Yep.
And you had some good ideas. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah. Any other questions so far? Now, I'm about to show you a series of techniques. And before I do, though, I want to touch upon something. And this goes back to, I think, what Martino said at the very beginning, is that, we don't address the person, we want to address the issue, right? And so this is the retrospective prime directive from Norm Kurth, who has a book, Project Retrospectives. Although, let me point out something really quick here. So certainly Norm Kurtz's book, Project Retrospectives, is a good source. I like this one a lot, Agile Retrospectives by Diana Larson, Esther Derby. I'll type it in the chat. And it's actually very timely because, I'll put this in chat real quick. So I just put in a chat. The reason it's timely is they just about a month or two ago came out with their new revised edition. So if you buy it now, it's a revised edition. I have the old edition, so I should pick up the revised edition to see what's different. But I like that book a lot, this Agile Retrospectives book. But Norm Kurth said that the retrospective prime directive is that regardless of what we discover, we understand that everyone on the team did the best job they could based on their skill sets and the information we had at hand. So based on that, how do we get better? So that's a concept coming in is, look, let's address the issues and not the problem, or not the people, but the issues, and kind of work through that. Is a prime directive, right? According to Norm Kurth, which I think is a very good perspective. In fact, one of the tips I give to new Scrum Masters is retrospectives are a great time to work through team issues. If you ever have an issue with a specific team member, that's probably better served as a one-on-one conversation versus a retrospective topic area. But with that said, let me share some techniques to help make our retrospectives better. So here are a series of techniques I'm going to share with you. This is not an exhaustive list, but just a sample list. This first one, oh, by the way, hold on, so let me fix this. This is mine, not theirs. A lot of these retrospectives come from the Easy Retro website, but this one, this technique, I think I invented. Oh, give me 1 second. I think I lost my share. Let me share my screen here. All right. So this technique is called good and better. So in the good and better technique, what happens here is Good are the things that in this last sprint we thought went well. Better is things for the upcoming sprints we can be doing even better. Very simple technique, good and better. But I want to highlight there's a nuance here. This is basically same as pros and cons, pluses and minuses, right? However, I deliberately changed the words because pros and cons and pluses and minuses, the words cons and minus have a slightly more negative connotation. And because the word con and minus have more negative connotation, my concern is that the word con and minus having a more negative connotation, the concern is that because it has negative connotation, people may not feel as safe, either consciously or subconsciously, adding data points to the cons or minus side. But by using two positive words like good and better, both words are positive. And so I'm hoping by using two positive words, it helps either consciously or subconsciously encourage participants to put comments on both sides, because I definitely want comments on how to be better. So I think that's an important part of it. And hopefully that gives us some of that psychological safety. Now, this one here is from the Easy Retro website, the Kudos Retro. Kudos is what went, so kudos want to give, what went well, what we can improve on, and any action items we want to take. Oh, by the way, as I go, if you have questions, feel free to ask them as we go. You can say them out loud or put them in the chat. Next, we have the Marie Kondo. For those not familiar, Marie Kondo has a book and Netflix special about tidying up. Also, fun fact: Marie Kondo, not too long ago, had her first baby, and after she had her first baby, she said, "You know, a lot of stuff I tell you in the book, I realize when you have your baby, don't overstress it. If you have a mess, it's fine. Just it's not the end of the world, right?" But in her book, she talks about tidying up, and the base concept is this: what brings you joy? If it brings you joy, keep it. If it doesn't bring you joy, throw it out, and you can recycle a bunch of stuff. And so this is a concept around the retrospective: what brings you joy, what went well, things we want to keep, things we want to throw out, what didn't go well, what do we want to stop doing and not keep anymore, and things to recycle, things we want to improve on and reuse. That gives a kind of perspective on it: joy, throw out, recycle. Oh, this is good if you have sports fans on your teams. The baseball retrospective, and you can probably tweak this for any sports you want. The Europeans in the room may appreciate the football version, or what we Americans call soccer. But the press conference in 3 words described the sprint. Picked off. Did anything catch us off guard? Outs were things that maybe we didn't like as much. Foul balls. What can we adjust to turn it into a hit for the next sprint? Hits. Good things that happen. Home runs are kudos, recognitions, people going above and beyond, great things to celebrate and maximize. The baseball retrospective. And if you enjoy other sports, you can probably tweak it for the sports of your choice. The appreciation retro. I'm glad that, I'm wondering that it wasn't so great that action items and other appreciations. Right? We have something positive. What has someone done really well? What's a nice thing someone did for you? What's something that makes you happy? What constructive criticism do you have? And what did you learn? These would be some of the positive retrospective techniques. And finally, out of this set here, the De Bono's thinking hats. Speaking of which, in the chat window, type in yes if you are familiar with De Bono's thinking hats. Type in no if you're not familiar with the De Bono's thinking hats. This is a technique I've been having a lot of fun with recently. I've actually incorporated this technique in facilitation modules in my advanced courses. I've done this before, and there's actually a kit you can buy that actually gives you the physical hats. So here's the concept. When you work with your teams, the danger is things start getting stale and start getting kind of repetitive. When you work with teams, you start getting to understand the personalities. I've been on teams where I had some team members, no matter what you ask them, it's like, yep, we can definitely do that. We can definitely do that. Anything's possible. Always happy to help, which is great, but that sometimes gets them in trouble. I've had other team members where no matter what you ask them, it's like, oh, I don't know if we can do that. That's so much work. That's not going to be possible. We're going to have to look into that, where nothing's possible. I had a guy on team. His name was 3-Day Dave. The reason his name was 3-Day Dave was, 1, his name was Dave, but 2, no matter what you asked him, it was 3 days. How long does it take you to fix this bug? 3 days. How long does it take to create this interface? 3 days. How long does it take you to fix the world? 3 days. No matter what you ask them, the answer is always 3 days. So people get stuck in these ruts. So in de Bono's thinking hat, it's actually a way to role play a different perspective. So there's a kit you can buy with these different hat colors. So if you're the white hat, whoever is wearing the white hat, their perspective is facts and just the facts. No feelings, no emotions. You're never going to say things like love or hate, enjoyed or disliked. All you're going to say is the data points, and that's it. White hat is facts and only facts. Whereas red hat is the exact opposite. Those are the feelings, the emotions, the kind of the EQ. I love this. I hate this. This made me nervous. This made me anxious. This made me happy. The red hat will be the emotions and feeling hat. The yellow hat is the positive hat. Everything's possible. Everything's great. This is all the things I enjoy. It's that glass half full, the optimist hat, right? But if you have a glass half full, you need a glass half empty. With the yin, you need a yang. With the good, you need evil. You need the balance. The black hat, which isn't necessarily a bad guy, but what it is just pointing out the risks, the concerns, the issues, what to look out for. That devil's advocate hat, the black hat. The green hat is the creative hat. Once you have all the obvious answers discussed, what's the wacky idea? What's the outside the box thinking? What's the idea that's so crazy it just might work? It's that outside the box creative thinking. Right? Fine, the blue hat's a little different. That's basically usually going to be the facilitator or someone that's kind of keeping an eye on the room, making sure that everyone's playing their hat properly, taking notes and giving feedback about people playing these roles. What I like to do with the thinking hats is initially, oh, great question, Katerina. That's exactly what I'm about to talk about. So initially, what I love to do is I love the people to pick their own hats initially, because when they do, it means they're going to pick the hat that they want to play, or that probably either best matches their personality or the one that they want to play. So at first, I just put all the hats down. Everyone can pick their own hat. And if I have multiple people with the same hat color, I don't even care much. In fact, if your team is bigger than 5, you are going to have multiple people with the same hat color. So initially, I let everyone pick their own hat until they get comfortable with it, until they understand how to do this. So I'll have people pick their own hats maybe the first 2 or 3 times. But then after that, what I love doing is assigning the hats. I'll say, hey, now that you had a chance to pick your own hats, that was great. And this time I'm going to mix it up, and I've kind of pre-assigned some hats for this one. And so what I like to do when I pre-assign the hats is I like to try to really help them shift their perspectives. So the optimist is now the black hat. The pessimist is now the yellow hat. The kind of the person that's the scientist, the facts and data only, with the person who's a robot with no emotions, they're going to be the red hat. But the person that is very high on the EQ, very high on the people, the emotion side, I might have them play the white hat, right? The architect, the engineer, it's really focused on the straightforward solutions. I might have them play the green hat. So I like to have them change hat colors. And what you'll notice is when you do that, it completely changes dynamics in the room. And if you do this in a way that kind of really allows them to take ownership of it, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun as well. There's a kit you can buy from the de Bono's Thinking Group. However, I'm going to warn you right now, I spent the money and bought this out of my own pocket. And then I later realized that not everyone loves wearing communal hats. And so I realized that we really don't need the actual physical hats, although if the hats are nice, but my team members didn't necessarily love wearing the communal hats. Any questions about any of these techniques? Let me share a thought with you. So as a Scrum Master, let me show how we use these to help solve our problems. So I have my Scrum Master progression for solving issues. So what I like to do as a Scrum Master to solve problems is, number one, for any problem we have, number one, did we talk about it in the retrospective? Number two, did we discuss the impact? If it's very impactful, we got to address it sooner. If it's not as impactful, it can wait. Number three, did we identify root cause? Because once we understand kind of why it's happening, it helps us get better to how to address it, which is number four, did we come up with a solution? These first 4 steps I like to address in the retrospective we're in right now. Then at the end of the upcoming sprint, you'll be in your next retrospective. And so in the next retrospective, what I like to do is circle back on this. Okay, based on what we talked about the last retrospective, have we tried these solutions? What were the initial results? Did we fix the problem? Did it make it better? Did it make it worse? Did it make no impact at all? What were the results? And going forward, what are next steps from here? Is the problem done and we can stop? Did the solution do nothing? Do we need to pivot to a different solution? Is the solution starting to take hold, but we need more time? What are next steps from here? In fact, I'll walk you through an example. So let's say that we have a team. I'll use software since I'm familiar with software. Let's say we have a team that has a 40% defect rate. So let's talk about in retrospective. So as a Scrum Master, in retrospective, as a Scrum Master, by the way, I love the team to realize their issues rather than me telling the team what their issues are. So I try to facilitate them come up with their own issues, coming up with their own solutions, but I might seed it. So I might say something like, hey team, I've been tracking our data, and what I've noticed is our team has a 40% defect rate. Industry average is 35%. Company average is 30%. We're at 40%. Thoughts around that? So I don't say it as a good thing or bad thing. I don't say it's a problem. I don't think it's an issue, but I say the data points and throw it back to the team to get their thoughts on it. So now the product owner says, hey team, I want to chime in here because I've talked to the help desk group and they're telling me for a fact that we are losing existing customers, and our sales team says they believe we're losing sales. That means the revenue we should be retaining, we're losing the retained revenue, and new revenue is suffering too. And all that from a product standpoint is really impacting the reach of our product. So it's very impactful. So let's get deep into it. So the team kind of talks about it a bit. And finally, what the team realizes is, yeah, after we think about this, we realize that as our systems get bigger and bigger and bigger, the majority of our testing is manual testing, which worked fine for a while when our systems were smaller. But once the size of our systems now, it's just really hard to manually test everything the time we have, and we're just missing things through manual testing. So I think it's just too much manual testing, not enough test automation. So the team finally comes up with that. Great. So let's talk about this. So talk about possible solutions. And one team member says, hey, back in my old team, I thought we did really good unit testing pattern automation at the unit testing levels that we're not doing on this team right now. I think I mentioned in passing before, but I never really brought it up that much. But I think if we did that, I think it's really going to help. So we talked about it a bit. And so the solution is that we're going to do more testing at the more test automation at the unit level to see if that makes a difference. So the one tester is going to kind of show everyone else what the pattern was to do the test automation at the unit level. So that's what happened in the retrospective. So we go off and we do that. So then starting in the next retrospective, go circle back. I'll say as a Scrum Master, I'll say, hey team. So last retrospective, we identified we're going to do the automation at the unit level. Did we actually do that? Team says, yep. For everything new we created, we added the automated unit test. And for anything we fixed and touched and tweaked or refactored, we added the automation at unit level too. So we did that for everything we touched in this last sprint. Awesome. What were the initial results? Team said the initial results are very promising. There are fixed 6 major defects that the test automation caught. We're pretty sure we would not have caught these defects in our manual testing. So those are 6 major bugs that we squashed before we sent that out. So that in itself is a huge win. So yeah, the initial results were great. Awesome. What are next steps from here? Team says, all right, so we just got started on this. We did it for one sprint. Based on our dashboard, we can see that we at this point have 50% code coverage, automated test, 15% coverage of our code base with the automated testing. And so we want to just keep doing this until we get about 65%. Once we get about 65%, then we feel like we have a pretty foundationally solid base of protection. And then we want to invest a bit more into automation at the integration level. But we want to shore up our unit level first before we do the integration level. I said, that sounds good to me. And so this is how we use this progression to solve a problem in that specific example. Any questions about this?
Very, very quick one from my side. So I love the framework. Just thinking about, do you discuss only one topic per retrospective, or you repeat this exercise for the different topics? Just try to understand, because of course it can be endless number of topics. Just how you vote, or you decide what are the top 3, top 5, or whatever. Just if you can give us an idea.
Yeah, and what you said, Martino, is pretty much going to be it. What's going to happen there is, as a team, especially when we start off, actually, throughout our whole life cycle, there might be 30 things we're horrible at, right? 30 things we could be doing better at, I should say. We're in the positive setting, so 30 things we could be doing better, right? However, we can't address all 30 at once. And so we will often, I pinpoint the ones we want to do, but I'm careful not to overwhelm the team. So if there's 30 things we want to address, we can't do all 30 at once. So we need to create focus. There are some times where it might be one singular topic in retrospective. That does happen. There are sometimes it might be 2 or 3, maybe 4 or 5, but I would make sure that we kind of keep it focused. We can't solve 30 things at once, right? And so I would say for me personally, I wouldn't go past like 3 items, right? Pick at most 3, but let's focus on that. Now, one of the things I will also say too, remember I said earlier, one of my clients was OPM. So when I was OPM, so in the US government, they're actually talking about making the Scrum Master potentially an official government position. So there's a lot of talk about that. So there's these forms we filled out. So one of the forms was, what artifacts does this position own? I'm like, Scrum Master doesn't own any artifacts. And like, we can't leave the field blank. So I said, put in NA. Like, we can't do that either. There has to be a real answer here. I'm like, well, we don't own anything. But then I thought about it. And when I realized actually, well, I gave them this answer because they needed something put in there. But as soon as I said it, I said, you know what, this is actually a good idea. What I do is I keep a process improvement backlog. So the product owner owns a product backlog. I like to keep a process improvement backlog just so I track the ideas. We don't have to fix them all at once, but I like to kind of backlog the ideas. So I remember some things we had brought up, and then we can circle back on those. So I told OPM, Ops Personnel Management, I said, if the Scrum Master has to own something, I think owning a process improvement backlog, actually, I think that'd be pretty cool. So I would have no problem if they added that. It's not an official Agile and Scrum artifact, but adding that as something that Scrum Masters own, I think that's actually a very healthy artifact for Scrum Master to kind of keep track of. And so we can keep that in the process improvement backlog, but kind of like what Kanban and Scrum does, we have to keep the focus on getting things done. So we'll focus on a few of them before we move on to the next ones. Oh, does that help with your question? Excellent. Any other questions so far? All right. I'm going to put you back in the breakout rooms. And in your breakout rooms, I want you to talk about the following. Have a discussion. Identify what's one thing your team does really well and that should be celebrated. And one issue that's plaguing your team, and any thoughts on how to deal with that in a positive way. So let me go ahead and create the breakout rooms. Recreate the rooms. All right, and I'll give you 7 minutes. Thank you, Danielle. Sorry, note. Thank you very much. Give you 7 minutes to have the discussion. Any questions before I open up the breakout rooms? Opening up the breakout rooms now. Have fun. Opening up the breakout rooms now. Whoops.
We're back.
Yeah, I apologize because what happened was I created 2 breakout rooms, but a lot of people actually dropped off. And so one room only had 1 person in it. Since at this point there's 6 of us, I think we can do this as an open conversation here as a group instead. So let's think about that. Anyone want to share one thing your team does really well that you want to that should be celebrated? I know at least one of you has something your team's done well that you want to celebrate.
Me?
Go ahead, Wendy.
Well, you were calling on me?
No, I'll say, I said, I know someone in the room has something they want to celebrate. So I wasn't
Oh, I
calling
thought
you
you.
specifically, Wendy, but if you'd like to
Oh,
share, you're welcome to.
Okay. So it's been a little bit since I've been with them, since last October, but I can say they adapted pretty nicely to Scrum. And you know, they were very, very what do I want to say? They were very good at what they did. So they were software engineers, and a lot of them were Java, Kotlin, and the client wanted them to switch to Golang and Python, and they switched like seamlessly. It was it happened pretty quickly, and they were very good at it.
That's fantastic. I love that story because you know, a lot of developers would say, sorry, you know, we're a Java team. We don't do that. But I love the fact they adapt to it. And, you know, that's kudos for them because on a resume, if you're the difference between a Java developer and what's called a polyglot, a multi-language developer is basically money, right? Because if I'm a polyglot, if I know multiple languages, right, you can command a much higher salary because you can plug me into more projects. Whereas I only know one language, your ability to be plugged in projects becomes more limited. So I love the fact that they invested in themselves by using that as an opportunity to learn, you know, to learn Python on top of their Java skills. That's fantastic. The company wins, they win, the project wins. That's great, Wayne. That's a great story. And
So
that should be celebrated.
Yes, they were very good at moving over to a new language and picking it up very quickly.
That's
And
fantastic.
that would feed into the second point actually, because on the client side, one of the issues with that team was when the employees had to transition or convert languages now, and they had to learn something new. They were much slower at it, and they would like say, well, I'm new at this, and the vendor being me and the engineers, they would say, well, we all had to learn it, you know, like I don't know, they were much quicker to pick it up and take it on versus the employees of the company. That's kind of something. So that was plaguing our team, but the way they dealt with it was we basically mentored them.
That's awesome. Well, and I was going to say, you know, what's a positive way to deal with it? And by, you know, everyone has a different change of pace, or we look at change management, you know, there's change management for organizations, for teams, and for individuals. And as an individual, some of us can, you know, soak in and change very quickly, and some of us need a bit more help, a bit more coaching and training to get there. And your group mentoring them, I think, is an awesome, positive solution.
Yes, yeah,
That's
they were
great.
good about doing that. Yep.
Excellent. Great examples, Wendy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'm glad I kind of voluntold you inadvertently to do that because those are two awesome examples.
Yeah, I thought you were calling me, so it's like, okay.
No, well, you know what? Maybe subconsciously I didn't consciously call on you, but I think subconsciously it all worked out perfectly. Awesome. Thank you, Wendy. Anyone else want to share?
Well, I can share my experience. I recently changed company and team. So I joined like a month ago. And one thing that I immediately noticed about this team compared to the previous one, I was with the previous one 5 years. So, I mean, I could feel the difference. So this team, specifically the team that I just joined a month ago, one thing that they do, I really believe they do amazingly is they are very kind and very supportive to each other. They're always not only available, but really happy to help each other. And for me, this is amazing. It's very high cohesion in the team, and I feel like very fortunate to leading them. In terms of playing them, I can feel there is a little bit of this feeling that they cannot really change things as they would love to, right? So this kind of, well, it is what it is. We tried in the past, but now. So one of my main beauty, I believe, is going to, through the retrospective, bring back this energy and this hope, because at the end we know that hope is what really moves things, right? And so I want to work with them in order to bubble up what are the main issue, because I still don't know what are. And through the retrospective, help them in order to improve as much as possible what is, disturbing or not motivating them. And so on one side, you have this amazing, soft skills quality. On the other hand, there is a little bit of, feeling that they cannot really change things or improve things as they wish. So those are the two things that I wanted to share with you.
Yeah, and that's a great point, because what happens is there are things that we can change as a team, right? But then there's things that we as a team can't directly affect that's still causing issue for us. And it can be, it can be demotivating when you realize, look, there's things we want to change. We don't have the power to change it. And then, like you said, finding ways to kind of help them with that is really gonna be the key to see, kind of bubble it up or identify ways to potentially make that happen is a great point. Yeah, that's
At
great
least
example.
on the area of influence that we can have, right? And
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
we'll see.
In fact, one of the biggest comments I get in my training courses is people tell me, Rich, this is a great class. I really wish my manager was in this class. That's one of the biggest comments I get in training all the time.
Manager and all the upper
Yeah, I wish my
management.
leadership was in this class.
Exactly.
All right. Well, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to close with another video. This one is on Facebook. So let me kind of get this set up. Give me 1 second here. I'm going to switch over to my browser. Here we go. Oops, hold on. The sound is not working. Let me start this over.
Someone back.
Be someone else?
Yeah. Someone better. Can people change?
Human beings never going to be perfect, Roy. The best we can do is to keep asking for help and accepting it when you can. And if you keep on doing that, you'll always be moving towards better. Did you want to be someone else?
Yeah.
It's so good. I'm going to
Someone
hear it one more
better.
time.
Can people change?
Human beings never going to be perfect, Roy. The best we can do is to keep asking for help and accepting it when you can. And if you keep on doing that, you'll always be moving towards better. Did you want to be someone else?
Yeah.
And I'll close with that. Always be moving towards better. With that said, once again, here's my contact information. Thank you for those that are still with me. And I'll close any other closing questions or thoughts before we call it a day. Can I help? Any closing questions or thoughts?
Thank you, Rich. That was amazing.
Thank you, Sarah. And great seeing you again, Sarah.
Yeah, you too.
Anyone else?
Yeah, thank you, Richard, for this session. It's really sad that a lot of people had to leave, drop off for some other tasks, and yeah, it's really a shame. Yeah.
Yeah, we have the recorded, and well, the slides will be, and I'll send you the slides as well.
So yeah, when they ask about slides, it's okay. I'll share.
Yep.
Very quickly, I know it really depends on the team, on the project, and many things, but do you have any preferred format for the retrospectives? Something that you really prefer over the others?
So my go-to by default, if I can't think of anything else, is this one, right? Because it's very easy, good and better. If you go to my slide share, I actually have, so let me show you here. Let me show you how this works. Give me 1 second here. All right. So I'll put this link in the chat. So
Got it.
in my slide share, I have another one called situational retrospectives. And so here, one of the things I show is a whole series of other techniques as well. And so there's some techniques here that you're going to really identify. Whoops, that's the wrong button. I did not like this slide share. This website used to be a lot easier to use. Trying to figure out how to navigate to the next slide. Oh, here we go. So some of the technique, like the starfish, I like a lot. Things on keep doing, more of, start doing, stop doing, less of is good. But one of the ones, the Nico, people come in and put a kind of identify how they're feeling day to day, happy, sad, medium. But I like this team radar a lot. So this team radar one, this is one where basically it's a very easy survey. So you can use these 8 dimensions: delivering business value, asking and receiving feedback, respond to change, understanding vision goal. This one I think says, planning, applying technical practices, working as a team, continuously improving. So each team member scores it 0 through 10, and they can see over time what the averages are. And you can do this at the end of every sprint because it's very easy to collect. You just give them a sheet, you have these 8 elements, score 0 through 10. So maybe this is what it looks like in sprint number 1. And then this is what it might look like in sprint 5. And what you'll notice is over time, it will expand and contract, expand and contract. And there'll be times where it's going to look better, but then 3 sprints later, some of it may have gotten worse and then it gets better. But it's a good, healthy one. So this is, I think, a fun one too. So you can look through here to see some different ideas. My default when I'm feeling super lazy is the good and better, but really it's identify where the team is and what their needs are at any given time.
Got it.
So you want to collect a set of different techniques. In fact, one of the things I recommend here are some websites. So they're great websites. I don't have it in here, but I'll put it in the chat. There's Retromat. I think it's Retro. I'll put it right here, actually. It's Retromat. Yeah, retromat.org is a good one. Another one I like a lot is Tasty Cupcakes, which has nothing to do with cupcakes. So this is a good one that has a whole great set of techniques. And then there's something called Liberating Structures. So Liberating Structures has about 30 different techniques in there. In fact, there's an app you can get called Lisa, the iPhone, the iOS app. It's called Lisa. And so those are some great places to go to generate different technique ideas. And so the concept is, someone mentioned earlier, how to keep it from getting stale and boring. Using different techniques helps prevent it from getting stale and boring. And just finding the technique that works well with the team based on where they are at any given time.
Yeah, got it. Thank you so much for sharing your links and information.
No problem at all. Well, thank you, folks. And with that said, I think we'll call it here. Thanks, everyone. Katerina, I'm going to stop the recording now. So I'll stop the share, stop the recording.
Okay, guys. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks again.
Bye.